Well, hello everyone. It's Coffee Catch Up, and here we are with the amazing, my good friend and gut health guru, nutritional therapist Evie Whitehead. I am just so glad you joined me today, Evie, because I know you are so busy. You travel a lot, and you're in corporates or just traveling and everything. So I know you zoom back for this. Zoom literally to get on this conference call. But I think our chats that we have offline, I really want to get them out there into the ethers, speaking about whether the legal profession that I tend to work with, because I know you do speak a lot at events and corporates and other thing, workplace, but I don't think the legal profession per se, and others that are going to watch this and read this later, really understand how important gut health is to our brains, to our overall systems, and definitely just our general well-being. And I think we were just chatting before I press record, as to actually why do people do it last minute when they're so desperate they come to you. But anyway, we'll delve into that.
Okay. Thank you for having me, by the way, inviting me on.
You're very welcome. It's so good to have you here. Look at us, we're being sensible. um
It's not always like this, is it?
but what I think actually, in the press, the media, there's a lot of noise around gut health for the last year, 2 years. But actually, you've been doing this for many years now, which means your experience, what you've seen, what others you're like, all kind of thing, you have been doing it a long time. And what I really wanted to know is how the hell did you get into gut health in the first place? It seems such a random kind of thing, poo, gut, you know.
Yeah, it wasn't really that big when I came out, when I was qualified and I came out and run my own practice and set up. It all happened by accident that I specialised in gut health, but at the time there was nothing like the noise there is about gut health now. And so now everyone's jumped on that bandwagon. They're all talking about gut health. In fact, most people don't even know what is that gut health. So we probably need to sort of like pare that back and explain it. But I wish I had got as famous through my work as someone like Professor Tim Spector or something, because they've just come out all of a sudden. They're talking about gut health, and like you said, I've been doing it for a long, long time. But I'm not as famous as Tim Spector.
And the thing is, why you're not as famous is because you're juggling being a mum, doing your own stuff. You're not a marketer. You don't have a great the PR behind you. You just do it to help people. You're there doing it on the
I
side.
genuinely do love what I do. I really do. I
That
really
said,
do.
you are being pulled in lots of different places because people have realised actually what a kind of bit of a genius nerd you are when it comes to that. So let's dig in. So when you said you qualified, what was it? At school, were you thinking, oh, yeah, gut? Why?
Yeah, okay. So what happened was actually I was a nerd back in the day. So way before I got into nutritional therapy, I was a little bit nerdy at home when all my friends were out partying. I did do that as well, but I was also quite comfortable being in and reading sort of A-level human biology. So my love and passion actually started off in learning about the human body and specifically about the immune system, weirdly. And so I've kind of like been reading for many, many years about and just being so fascinated what the human body can do. And I'm a proper nerd about it. But what happened when I qualified was I had to hit the ground running because I was going through a divorce at the time.
Right.
And it was a difficult time. My children had gone to secondary school only just, and I was studying and then completed my studies, was getting divorced at the same time, and I just had to get my practice up and running, and not let the fear, that imposter syndrome, get to me, because that was
Later,
I
yeah.
just was not ready. I didn't feel ready, but I was forced to do it.
Yeah. Okay.
Weirdly enough, the first three clients I saw all had diverticulitis. I'd never heard of it. I hadn't really done much about it in my course. And so it took me on this really deep dive into what is divertic, what is the gut, how does that happen, how does someone get a disease state in the gut? And that linked with my love for immune systems and the gut, that it took me in there. And then I just got a bit good at the gut thing.
So you were kind of forced into that situation then to
It
become
was
a bit of a
just,
guru. Otherwise, you'd been plodding along, just doing your love and
it was pure luck that I got gut clients straight off the bat, and I fell in love with it, and I was so fascinated. And the more I learned and the more I delved into it, the more I helped people with those conditions, then the gut health thing sort of expanded into IBS, IBD, acid reflux, indigestion, heartburn, everything through that digestive tract. And I've been loving it ever since.
yeah.
It literally was just by accident.
Yeah, and forced to out of your fear. Like you said, you touched on the imposter syndrome. And I
Mm.
think, gosh, I don't know anyone. Actually, that's a lie. I know a couple of people who are just like, yeah, I'm great at everything and generally believe that. But I think as women, maybe we do have that kind of sense of maybe we're 7 out of 10 good. Like even though we know academically and from experience and expertise, we know what we're doing. So actually, how do you, have you encountered imposter syndrome? I know you're highly qualified in what you do. You've been doing it for years and years and years. And you're a very experienced nutritionist, but how have you overcome that feeling? Like, oh my God, I'm just a mum.
Yeah.
That's what you said to me the other day. I'm just a mum who walks my dog, and I'm just,
Yeah. I'm just a
actually,
mum from Bourne End who walks the dog along the river and has 3 kids. I know.
yeah,
But the imposter syndrome, well, I was forced to do it, like I said.
yeah,
So I didn't have a choice at the time. Well, I did have a choice, actually. It's not true. I could have broken off my studies and I could have gone done something else, but I felt so invested and so in love with what I was doing, learning. I didn't feel that there was another option for me because I was like, right, by hook or by crook, I'm going to make this work and support my young growing family. And I just didn't see another route for myself. So the imposter syndrome was always there, um, at every event for the longest time. And I remember the first year thinking, the only way I'm going to get over this and to get more confidence is to say yes to every opportunity that comes my way. And I made a point of saying yes to every radio show, every article I got asked to write. I was lucky enough to get featured in the Independent, in the Times, and that was just by saying yes to everything. And I really just threw myself into it. And the corporate events, then they started to come up, and I would be standing in front of a lot of people in a boardroom with a lot of people. It was terrifying for me, absolutely terrifying.
you've never studied public speaking or something. You just know you're an expert in what you do.
Well, I had to have a little word with my dad, who's sadly no longer with us. But at the time when I was asked to do my first talk, um, I remember just being terrified before I went into the boardroom. And I literally had a little private chat with my dad in heaven and sort of said, "What, give me something. How am I going to do this?" And the voice that came through just said, "You're the expert, you know more than they do in the room, and just go in there and just be yourself and just be authentic and don't be afraid to be yourself. It's okay." And I sort of thought, okay, I don't know where that comes from, but I went in there and I remember thinking, right, I'm just going to have to take control of the situation. And they wanted me to talk about nutrition for an hour. I mean, that
It's
subject,
daunting.
just
However,
nutrition. Like, I'm like, what, any one bit of it? Can we pick a bit? So no, just give us a general nutrition talk. So my head was like, I don't know where to start. So I just kind of started by asking them questions actually and getting to know them a bit better, and that sort of eased me into it. But the imposter syndrome is real and it's always there. I don't think I ever don't have it. I've just got more confident and comfortable with standing and talking to people from doing it so much.
yes. Therefore, it's kind of that in that kind of scenario, then it's just practice, practice, practice. You do it until the
Absolutely.
fear kind of subsides a bit and think, God, I do know what I'm doing. But it's a real visceral fear. And actually, imposter syndrome, if you're going to do something like, even now you're like, oh God, I'm like brilliant, doesn't matter, well, this chat will impart information, even if it's little nuggets, to
Mm.
one person, and you've changed someone's life.
Mm.
How cool is that? And it's just you and
Yeah.
me, but it's that same, oh my God. But I was going to
I
say,
think fake it till you make it is a good one as well.
And you know what? I think I'd like to talk a little bit about that imposter syndrome and then the fear and how that exacerbates a gut. You know, we're all like, you know, they say, oh my God, my stomach's kind of churning over. But also, I'd like to talk about hormones and menopause, if that's okay. I know that I don't know if that's by default or you just have friends or you work more into it.
Mm.
I know you from a lot of hormones, menopause, perimenopause, about how we change, how our body changes, bloating. I know you've helped me personally with the bloating. I'm like, oh my God, I've gone through menopause now, but that's a massive change to the
Yeah,
way
and that happens
I.
around that change. It's all tied up with the change in the hormones. And so the clients that come to me, although they're women like you and me, they're our age group, and they're
Very
going
young.
perimenopause and menopause. I do see men as well, but I see what the interesting thing between men and women is I see men for more upper digestive problems. So they tend to get a lot more heartburn, indigestion, reflux,
Right.
or they get the irritable bowel disease. They're the type of men that I would see. But the women that I'm helping the most are going through the change. And it's the change in hormones because there's estrogen receptors everywhere. You know, they're not just in our ovaries, they're everywhere in the gut. And so actually it's the
Are
change.
they?
Yeah,
Talk about this.
they're
What?
everywhere. You have estrogen receptors everywhere.
Is that why with my Easter I put it on my thighs and arms and wherever? Is that why or not?
Well, you can just, yeah, you rub it in and it just goes into the skin, into your bloodstream, doesn't it? So then it's like circulated. But the estrogen, when those hormones start to change, it's a really powerful effect in the gut. And we think that there's a strong link between the gut microbiome, the bacteria that's living in the gut, and how that responds to those hormonal changes. There's a cross speak between hormones, gut bacteria, and the cells lining the gut. And women's colon, interestingly, if you're a geek like me, interesting to me, 10 centimeters longer than a man's because it has to navigate around the reproductive organs. So much it's longer, although 10 centimeters doesn't like sound long, it's it's enough. It's to create more twists, turns, pockets for gas to build up.
Ruler.
Yeah,
Centimeters. I mean, that's
to
my
get
body.
yeah, and more interestingly, so not just more twists, turns, more space for things to be felt or things to go wrong, but things for the nerves to innovate. So actually the feeling, women are much more connected to the feeling in the gut. So actually we feel more pain there. So we can be really sensitized to it, especially when we're stressed or if there's stress going on. So stress and hormones, hormonal changes, and a gut underlying gut problem that might have been there, but you got away with it until the hormones change, and now you're really noticing it. So that three-pronged approach is a nightmare for most
Yeah.
women. It's a big problem.
And of course, I think a lot of us in our 20s, 30s, I mean, I had kids in my 20s, another one in my 30s, another one in my 40s, and because that was stupid. But of course, I'm at a different stage in my life, and my hormones, are playing a different stage. But so when you've got young kids, or you're at work full time or stress, you kind of put it on the back burner food. And I was kind of, I was speaking, and I like to talk with you a little bit about this because I think a lot of us lay people, as in that we're not kind of biological. When I think of nutritionists, I just think of food. I don't think of the actual biological side of it. And remind me, you were talking with me the other day about actually it wasn't cooking that you were, things.
I didn't get into nutrition through food. I got into it because my love of science and the human body.
Ah,
I've always had that fascination. It's always been my drive. And then having the children,
yeah.
it felt like the perfect marrying of like learning something to build my own career would be nutrition. How can I feed my young growing family? Because you actually, I think you spaced your children out quite nicely. So you got to spend some nice quality time with your children. But mine was just like I can't say it because you'll have to bleep it out. But it was it all happened all very, very close together. So I had one,
Yeah.
and then when that one was born, I fell pregnant very quickly with twins.
Yeah.
So then there was only a year between the first one and the twins.
It's been a blur.
It's an absolute blur. But somehow I got through my studies. I have no idea how I did it, but I think it's this feeling of like that that's where I was very strongly pulled towards doing that. How am I going to look after my family, and how am I going to have a career for myself once the kids are off my hands a bit more?
Yeah.
And so it felt like the perfect thing for me to do.
Yeah, that's what you knew. That's what you enjoyed. And I think if we told our
Yeah.
younger selves or our children, don't do something you love, because then you can excel in it. You might be brilliant at maths and want to, and your parents might say, go and be an economist
Mm.
or be a lawyer because that's what our whole family done. But actually, if you're not enjoying it, how can
No.
you sustain that career without burning out because you don't love it? So that's really interesting that you kind of, it was that nurturing, that innate animalistic thing. You thought, I've got to feed my kids.
Yeah.
So with your human biology brain head on and
Yeah.
learning more about that, and
Yeah.
then going through a divorce, that must be really terrifying. And we'll speak a little bit more about your feelings of, because I'm going to ask all my guests what they feel about the legal profession, and it's really interesting because it's so thin, but we'll talk about that a bit later. But I wondered if it's, so I'm not taking it down into like the pits of despair, this thing, but actually I met the Bowel Babe, Deborah, a few times before she became very, very ill, and she spoke at a couple of events I went to. She's really, really interesting, but I think she got that bowel cancer story out there where it wasn't a taboo, like, oh my God, poo kind of
Mm.
thing. Have you seen any instances where you've seen maybe someone who's come to you because actual, the guidelines, nice guidelines or something just isn't working for them, or they just haven't gone down a route where a nutritional therapist? Have you seen anything like that?
Yeah, I see it. Sadly, I see it all the time, and it got a lot worse after COVID. So I'd say that my cases of IBS and IBD, so just for clarification, that's irritable bowel syndrome versus irritable bowel disease. So two different things. So irritable bowel syndrome is like a collection of symptoms that you might have, like bloating, maybe some diarrhea, then constipation, then gas, uncomfortable tummy, usually stress related, but I always see a bit of stress involved with that one. Or there's irritable bowel disease, where you've actually got a diseased state in your gut. So it's very inflamed. So that could be Crohn's, colitis, diverticulitis disease. There's sort of a selection of irritable bowel diseases that I'm more likely to see than others. However, what happens when they go through the conventional medical route is they are usually given a bland diet, and they're given medication to manage the symptoms. But this isn't getting to the root cause, and this is what nutritional therapists do. This is what we do. We get to the root cause. We want to know what drives that inflammation. Where is that immune response coming from? Why have you got a disease? You weren't born with it. Why have you got or developed this condition? And so our job is to unpick what has happened. And usually I build a timeline with the client, and there's usually some really amazing penny drop moments when they go, oh my God, I'd never connected the dots. So like, 8 years ago, I was in Egypt. I got a really, really bad stomach infection. I got a gut infection, didn't recover for a long time. They gave me loads of antibiotics and blah, blah, blah. And then, then the stressful event at work, I was really, really stressed traveling into London every day and couldn't keep up with my work. And you can see this timeline. It starts to build this picture. And so you can track it back, and you can say, right, there's probably something that happened in the gut back in that, first event that
Yeah.
then got resolved. And then the underlying predisposition of genetics and a change in the gut microbiome might have already been there. And then that just kind of like, it's exponential, these layers build up. Anyway, they go to the conventional route, like go to a gastroenterologist, and they'll have a camera put up their bottom and had to have a good look in the gut. And then you might come away with a diagnosis of Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, or diverticular disease, something like that. And then, like I said, they're given a bland diet because what the doctors want to do is manage the symptoms. But from nutritionist point of view, we know that the gut won't really fully recover if you're not putting the right things into it, because it's all about keeping this gut microbiome healthy and happy and protecting the environment, so the gut lining itself. So we might have to do it in stages, but we heal the gut, allow space and time for the gut to heal. Then we start to build in the proper nutrition in through diet. You might need some supplements to help manage some of the symptoms along the way. But really, we're looking at the longer term picture of how you resolve something. Sadly, some of the patients I've worked with, the clients, have gone on their medication and got worse, and then they come to me and they're like, you're my last port of call, what can I do? It's such a desperate situation, they're so uncomfortable, we're in so much pain, sometimes can't work, and so they have to give up their job because they are so ill, losing weight and all of that, and sometimes it's just some really simple changes and they start to feel better straight away. So it is a route worth investigating if you have got to that point where you're like, I don't know what to eat anymore, don't know what to do. Just get professional advice, but make sure the person's qualified, because there's so many people out there, and who might be called a gut health, expert or something, or using the frame gut health or something like that, and they might not have the
They
experience.
don't know you, but of course they could come to you, and we know you're qualified. But where would someone go? Is there like a registry of
Yeah, you can, if you're qualified, you can go on to the BANT websites. That's BANT, that's British Applied Nutritional Therapists Association. And you can just type in nutritionists or nutritional therapy, and then you can look through the register. But usually anyone who's got the qualifications to help you is very happy to share them with you. So don't be afraid to ask, because I know how hard it was for me to get them. So I'm only too happy to show them to you and
you
tell
work
you.
hard for that. It's like, yeah, I mean, I don't want to go on a 2-week course and say Elaine Pasini, gut guru, but I can imagine people do this last and think, yeah, I've had it myself, therefore
Yeah,
so it's
yeah, and you
very
want to
important.
make sure you're qualified, because it's at best it will be poor advice, and at worst it will be dangerous. So just make sure you get qualified advice if you've got any of those things going on.
Have you seen an uptake, Evie, with I know a couple of people in my wider family, extended family, who've been told they've got Crohn's, lost a lot of weight, don't ignore, but their jobs are actually so busy they can't manage that. And I think actually it's really interesting what you say, because these aren't really close family members. I kind of meet up with them every so often, so we'd never have that in-depth conversation to say, like, have you spoken to a nutritionist? And some are quite young and they're working and they're like, oh, the doctor says this. But I'm thinking they are just on white rice. Well, I'm thinking, oh, that seems just wrong to me, because brown rice, veg, I don't know. So like you said, it's, if people are just going down the path, of course, the NHS, as we know, they are under the cost, they are drowning. So
Yeah.
I would imagine with the NHS, they just want to keep people at bay.
So
Don't want
why aren't they employing people like me to go into the GP surgeries and actually filter these people out so that they're not overburdening the NHS? Well, I don't understand why we're not asked to be part of that service. So we know that nutrition is going to solve 80% of those issues, whether it's pre-diabetes, diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, all of those easier things. And IBS is one of the most common complaints of someone going into the GP surgery.
yeah.
So why are we not employed more in the GP profession? I don't know why we're not
I'm
involved in that.
going to throw the word big pharma in there. I don't know. I've had conversation with friends, and
Terrifying to think that that would really be what's stopping people getting the advice and help they really need. I
because
really want to have more faith
it's
in
about
people.
trials, isn't it? It's about trials, and trials bring in big pharma. I mean, I'm not, this is like supposedly, but of course, big pharma and trials and the NHS, they're therefore gonna, it's money, isn't it? It's kind of money. Whereas actually, I guess, would you call it holistic? How would I kind of say
Yeah,
alternative?
it is. It's complementary therapy. It's a holistic therapy, because the therapy part of what I do is the nutritional therapy.
Yeah, okay.
You might come to me and say, do you know what? I need your help. I've got IBS. I've got bloating. I'm not sleeping. and I'm really stressed out. And actually, the whole consultation, you might be thinking, I'm just going to be talking to you about broccoli and carrots all the time, but it's not. I'm probably more likely to say, talk me through your routine. You know, how do you wind down for sleep, and what do you do first thing in the morning, and what's the first thing you eat or drink, and tell me about your lifestyle. Where you're
Everyone, Evie tells me off all the time for coffee, but I've definitely, since I've met Evie, I definitely have gone down. But it is
oh,
about,
coffee's there. I'm not anti-coffee. There are some good things about coffee, maybe just not too much, depending on what you might be struggling with. But you can see that the therapy side of it, it might be more, I'm never going to resolve an IBS case if that person is not sleeping and they're stressed out. You can't. So it's only fair for me to say we need to work on this. I'll give you loads of advice. There's loads of other practitioners I can point you towards to get this holistic approach, because if you're not sleeping and you're stressed out and you're eating not enough, or maybe you're drinking too much coffee and you're just driving your waking day on caffeine, you are going to have IBS.
and it really is kind of what you put into your body and how that mindfulness. And I think, when I mean, I love the NHS. I think I'm so sad to see it breaking like this. But I still love them, kind of thing. But I appreciate it's times when it's communication. It's that's what it is. You touched on why aren't nutritionists brought in. I'm going to speak in a minute and ask you what you think actually maybe our society needs with legislation changed with that. But before I'm going to ask you that one, can I ask you, you kind of mentioned, the case studies before we jumped on this live. We were obviously, with discretion and confidentiality, you don't tell me any names or anything. Some of the last minute, I was explaining everyone to Evie that I work a lot in the legal profession, and people, they're busy, they've got kids after COVID, still everyone's a bit discombobulated. Are we working at home? Are we working in the office? What do we eat? Everything's expensive. A meal can be like 15 quid a day. Did you grab something? But also, there's a lot more ADHD seem to be diagnosis. There's a lot more mental health going on. And if you're working in a law firm and you're struggling with your home life, maybe you're going through a separation, you've got headaches, you feel nausea, you might be feeling, really very depressed. The last thing people are really going to think about is their gut, but actually, and then they might be ill, eventually go to a doctor. So what I'm trying to say is, Evie, can you give us some case studies maybe of when some have come to you, when you wish they would have come sooner, but if they did come to you, how have you been able to change their lives?
Yeah, so one case that comes to mind, it was really sad actually. So the husband, had come to me, had been diagnosed recently with Crohn's or colitis, Crohn's, and another weird disease that you might not have heard of called Guillain-Barré syndrome. Okay, so he'd been diagnosed with these two things. So he was exhausted, couldn't get out of bed, and had this gut problem. And he came to me and he said, I'm desperate. You are my last port of call. I have been to the gastroenterologist. They've put the camera up. They've said that I've got this disease state of the gut. They've put me on medication. The medication's made me feel worse. I feel much worse on it. Is there anything I can do through diet? And I was like, certainly is. So let's start with some basics. We're just going to change these two things. We just changed a couple of things in his diet because it was too overwhelming. His wife was a nurse. She was doing shift work. Had children going through uni. It was just a very, very stressful. You could feel the stress in this family situation was awful. And he had to give up his work because he was so ill. And we changed a couple of things in his diet. And the next time I saw him, he looked completely different. And his wife was crying. She came on the Zoom call. She was crying. She was like, I can't tell you how much you've changed our life. She said, I don't understand how it's taken for us to find you and to get this. Why have we not? I don't understand. She said, and then he said he'd been back to the gastroenterologist for a checkup. They'd put the camera back up, and they've said there's no disease there, it's gone. That's a miracle. He said the medicine's really worked for you. And he said, no, I didn't take it. The medicine made me worse. I stopped it. I went to see a nutritional therapist. She changed my diet, and that's the only change I've made. And he laughed at him and said, if we thought nutritionists would be the way forward, we'd be employing them, wouldn't we?
Oh, that's
And so the poor
great that you've
just kind
changed.
of went away, completely shut it down, didn't want to know about it, wasn't interested in it at all. And he said, you've just been lucky. It's just one of those freak things. It's just recovered on its own. And I think that's I'm hoping they're few and far between, those sort of cases. But it was really tragic because it had affected the ripples through the family
Yes.
was palpable. You know, he couldn't
But
work.
he'd had to leave work. So I think, providing is a huge thing. And psychologically, it's good for our mental health to work. But
Yeah,
even, geez, and uni kids as well. That's
yeah. And I see I've seen a lot of cases since COVID, and I don't want to jump on the COVID bandwagon too much, but certainly since vaccines and since COVID infections and
right.
stress that we all went through in that time, the cases of IBS and IBD have ramped up significantly. Like it was almost double the amount of cases I was having to have. I mean, I've never had to have a waiting list before, but I mean, that was a nice outcome from a work perspective, but it's not a nice outcome, is it? Because these people are really struggling.
Yeah. I mean, you
I
can't,
know I've got the long COVIDers, so and I've got the long haulers.
yeah.
So the people that are called the long haulers, they've got the long lasting COVID symptoms. The gut problems related to that are significant. And we know that there is a change in the gut once you've been through COVID or the vaccine, and that is genetic dependent as well. So not everyone's had it. It has to be, doesn't it? It can only come down to your DNA,
No,
what
the
your
DNA. Yeah.
or your gut microbiome, what your gut microbiome was already like, the state of your gut before you went into that situation.
Just you keep saying microbiome, like I have a clue what you're talking about.
Sorry.
Can you just explain what that actually means?
Yes, it's the collection of bacteria that is residing in your gut.
Right.
And we think it weighs about 3 pounds in weight. If we scraped all the bacteria out, it's about 3 pounds in weight. And we know it has a significant impact in your health because there is conversations going on between the bacteria themselves inside the gut and also from the bacteria to your gut cells, so your own human cells. So it's a really beautiful symbiotic situation in there. And it doesn't take much to upset it. I mean, you put in some medication, maybe poor diet, a stressful event, and no sleep, and your gut microbiome is not going to be in a happy place. So we're all about encouraging a healthy environment for the bacteria to live in. But what we really want to do as well is make sure that there is enough bacteria in there. Diversity of species matters. So we want nice, diverse, bit like if you walked into a meadow and you saw all the meadow flowers, all the different colours, all the different species of plants, as opposed to McDonald's car park drive-through.
Yeah, it's not a calming place, is it? It's
No, the odd weeds growing in the corner.
That's a beautiful analogy. Beautiful. Sorry, I've been watching the Fast Show. Beautiful. But actually, it's a really gorgeous analogy, isn't it? Because we don't stop and talk. We don't plan. We don't think. So that's so interesting.
See, people don't think about gut because you can't see it. It's not in, you
Yeah.
can't get in there. It's we can't see it, so we ignore it. And actually, I don't think people have fully made the connection between what you eat and how you feel. We're still trying to work it out. We still don't know everything. There's still so much to learn.
It's fascinating. So I can see why you're a complete nerd and you're so passionate about it because, you want, we want to live. So I know we're living longer. The stats say we're living longer, but we're getting iller earlier.
Yeah,
That's what I've seen,
yeah.
the latest stats. And actually, that's a really frightening thought because I don't want to be this, on a potty and have my children wheeling me round and changing my
No, and worse than that, the gut link between that and dementia. So
uh,
actually, rather than just thinking about the gut problems, so if you're manifesting gut problems now, you definitely should be speaking to someone and getting that sorted and seeing what you can do. So the fact you might be if you have any bloating, gas, diarrhea, constipation, if you've got that going on now, that is your sign
All right,
to
yeah.
go and get it sorted, because actually what happens further down the line, it might be a bit of that, but actually it might be more related to your mental health and your cognitive function. And Alzheimer's, dementia, we know that those cases are going up, and that's going up in line with our food industry. So the way that our food, our food shopping has changed so much from, just 50 years ago. I think it was something like 80% of the stuff in our shopping trolley was all natural stuff. And now it's the other way.
Yeah, I mean the times where you used to go with your wicker basket and walk to the shop and buy kind of, your bread or this or your fruit and everything. We just kind of do, and that's life, isn't it? Because it's fast in the West.
Yeah, we're all stressed, we're all too busy, and we don't want to be spending hours in the kitchen chopping, preparing food. So I get it, because I'm the same. I don't really want to, well, I would like to, but I have to work. And I like my work, but I think we have to get back to real food, the way we're intended to have real food. And there might be some quick wins in there. So it's worth speaking to someone and getting some advice on, okay, I'm really stressed out. I'm a lawyer. I have not got time for chopping and making my own lunch. What can I have ready in the cupboard or take to work? What's my best option out of all the bad options?
It's planning then, do you think? A lot of planning. I'm terrible. I'll be spontaneous and think I won't plan. I mean, so I know it's much more the biology, but it's thinking I've got to be mindful about what I'm eating. And I mean, I went to a grammar school, and I was, I should be bright enough to know I did cookery O level, and Evie, I failed it. And you know why I failed it? Because I didn't turn up. I couldn't be bothered because I wasn't interested. I didn't understand it. I had no joy of it. It wasn't really something in my family that we did. I didn't watch my mum. We tended to go out to restaurants because that's what my mum did. Let's go out to a restaurant. And so it wasn't around me, this food. So I know that I've had to learn, speaking to you and just having kids as well, that I've had to learn to plan and be a bit more mindful about what I eat, rather than, oh, I'll grab a sandwich because that's more bread, more kind of thing.
Yeah, it does. It really matters. And I wonder whether this takes us round to sort of thinking about that intervention point. Where is that intervention point? Is it the education system? Is it, do kids need to be more aware of the long-term implications of eating the food that, let's face it, most of our kids love eating? It took me ages to get my kids off pot noodles.
I love pot noodle. It's the best, isn't it? It's craving.
Yeah. I mean, it took me ages, and now I'm so impressed. Honestly, my work is done because they've seen me doing it over and over again, that I will create food from scratch. And not everyone has the luxury of that time. I do in the evening, but it's come around. The kids are pretty good with their food now, but for the longest time, my kids were not on board with the healthy eating.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to change tack a little bit now, and I'd like to speak about the work you do when you go into, because I know that workplace um, culture, the health, retaining employees, keeping them healthy. You don't want people to go off sick. That's more kind of thing. A lot of people don't bring in a temp or a float solicitor or whatever, so other people are picking up the slack. So I think workplace culture and health for mind and body is really important, and I think the legal profession is definitely talking about it. When I go to any of the conferences or speak to friends and who are in that, but I don't know if it's a tick box, and I don't know if they're actually getting people in. Now you are able to go in, aren't you, to corporates and firms, and you'll do that. Is that correct? You actually do that quite a lot. That's big part of your
It's really good fun. It's a different string to my bow, another angle for how I can help people, and I quite like it because my one-to-ones with my clients, they're quite intense. So it's all about me I'm really paring down what's gone on for them and tracking back, and it's quite an intense but beneficial process of just being able to peel back the layers and help that person with a very personalized, targeted plan, compared to going into a corporate and doing a talk to, like, a room full of people. And we talk about it can be any subject. So that depending on what the client wants, so what the corporate wants, but the most common talks that I will go in to do will be how to get more energy from your food, how to feel energized, because people are exhausted. They're
Yeah.
generally exhausted by like 3 o'clock. They're just, just that energy slump. And so there's some really, really cool ways you can just get everyone a bit more energized. And so I go in and really talk about some very simple things that can change the workplace for a lot of people. And I think they enjoy the talk because I keep it very realistic. So I'm not like going too much into the science. So that's a popular talk. And then another one is the menopause, obviously, since all the menopause in the workplace, corporates are pretty keen to make sure they're looking after the welfare of their staff. So I get employed to go and do menopause talks, like how to eat for a better menopause.
Yeah.
There is a certain style of eating and what we should be eating more of and eating less of to have a better hormonal balance, but also always working on the gut health side of things. And then there's beat the bloat, something like that, like a bloating talk, because a lot of people get IBS and bloating.
Yeah.
So they're probably my three. Oh, and food and mood, really popular one.
Food and mood.
Yeah, how to help eat yourself a bit happier, because we know there's such a strong link between diet, gut health, and mental health, mood, depression, anxiety. So there's some really common nutritional deficiencies that are related to those sort of conditions. So yeah, I mean, it's a really good, fun. I try and make it fun, and I
Yeah.
try and give them a chance to ask me questions, because I want everyone to get maximum benefit from the talk so they can actually go home and start getting excited about how to make food better and make themselves better. Yeah.
And I think it is, just if in our day to day, if say I'm just doing, I don't know, leasehold law, and I'm so into that and everything, and like you say, I'm just grabbing something at lunch, and then it's the 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, slump, because we're often just behind our desks.
Yeah.
It's not like Ally McBeal, not all suits, not everyone's in court and doing that. That's kind of a very small part of law. The advocacy on that kind of side, majority of people are just in an office, be it and they're not eating, and it's also like getting up. So actually, to
Yeah.
have be it an online Zoom with you as in a workplace thing, or to go somewhere, actually, it triggers something in our mind, surely, that's going to think, oh, hang on a minute, this is
Yeah.
fun. This is my body. And I think you're right, that bloating, I think, ask anyone, especially, I guess, girlfriends my age, is like, oh God, where did my waist go? Mine came back, thank you, after speaking to you. But I think workplaces need to do a lot more. Have an Evie afternoon, or kind of even an hour. And it's like even that lunchtime, coming at a lunchtime.
Yeah.
You don't want to kind of name and shame, like, oh, what's in your packed lunch?
No, I don't. We always have a bit of a laugh, actually. I've been going into I've been invited to go and talk for, am I allowed to say the company name in there? Yeah, so I was invited to go and talk for Lego. So I do quite a lot of workshops for Lego. And they always laugh. Now they get used to me now. So they walk in and they have this big lunch buffet set up, and it's all sandwiches, crisps, cans of Coke, chocolate bars. And they're like, oh no, don't look. And I'm like, honestly, no food police here. But it's a buffet. You have to have, that's what corporates do, and they can provide healthier options. But in that sort of lunch and learn situation, that's what works, and that's fine. And we have a bit of a laugh about it. So there's no judgment about it. But it's like let's talk about what you can do when you're in control of your food, when
Yeah.
you have choice.
Okay, no, I love that. And that's just it. If you're given something at work, kind of thing, who doesn't love a crisp sandwich? But you're not going to have it every day, are you? Well, I would if I could, but I don't want to. To be fair, I actually don't want to anymore.
No, I don't want to either.
Oh, okay. Actually, I don't feel well. I don't feel well, and actually, immediately after, I can think, oh, I've got the job. But I'm tuned onto it now after having some sessions with you. I'm really tuned on to how I feel. Okay, I would like to talk about we spoke about it a bit before, that kind of what would you like to see in your field of the gut health and the well-being, everything, with change in our society, and maybe legislation when it comes to, I think, actual nutrition, gut health, and the menopause. You touched on, obviously the Equality Act, that's a great app that, you know, really looks after us in the workplace. And actually menopause isn't part of that, but the symptoms are, for example. Yeah, what would, you know, you said before about, you know, why aren't nutritionists going in and being part of, you know, thing? What would you like to see in your time, you know, the next decade, for example?
Yeah. I would like to see, I would like to get in there early with children.
Uh,
For them to have some sort of education that would filter then down through to their parents. So we start with the children because yes, all kids are going to want to go and have McDonald's or some fast food or something now and then, and probably more than they should, because that's just how the way they're designed, those teenage years especially. But what's terrifying is that we've got the highest rate of teenage suicide, you know, for centuries. This
yeah.
is like, it's just going up and up and up, and there has to be a strong correlation with the stress, their environment. But you know, why can't we help them with nutrition education as well, how to actually support them and give them the nutrients they need to feel happier, to have better gut health, and just to be more educated about their choices. I think so. I'd like to start with the education, but then the other, to answer your other question, I think there's always room for workplace support for staff and for companies, employees to be educated about how to be aware about menopause for maybe other people and what they can do. And maybe that's an optional thing. Maybe they could do these sort of monthly talks. It could be an online masterclass or something. You know, I have talked with quite a few corporates about delivering online masterclasses so that their time's not taken up too much and it's optional, it's recorded, and then they can watch it when at their leisure. So maybe something like that. Other than that, I'm not really sure because I don't know enough about
Yeah,
what
I
you
think,
do.
I think as well what you touched before. I think if there's kind of like a pathway, maybe kind of say, you know, you've got this, or you're fit feeling symptoms, rather than, you know, the Dr. Google, which will be AI. And actually, just for everyone, kind of AI now, that it's so brilliant, but the SEO still is part of that AI, so it's still worth writing your really,
Yeah,
but because you're the one that might come up. But I think it's that pathway of saying, you know what, it's okay to, you might be diagnosed with the doctor, but they are busy, busy, busy. So if you can take some of the pressure off and don't assume the NHS is going to pick up, you've got to take responsibility for understanding what's going on in your meadow. You know, back to the kind
yeah,
of,
yes, exactly. But the problem is that it's not, we're not subsidized enough through, actually the GPs do have the ability to signpost out to people like me,
okay,
but there isn't the, there's no money in the pot for us. So
right,
the client has to come out and pay privately, but the GPs do have a list of people like me that they're allowed to refer out to. Usually I get referred by people who know me.
yeah,
So
yeah,
local GPs might mention me or say you should go and see Evie. But from a GP surgery, sort of like if you think of it as, and we did actually roll out a program. So I was part of a preventative healthcare service that I was a founding member with three other ladies, and we created a 6-week online program aimed at depression, to help people with depression. And it was so popular, we did actually get to run it through the GP surgeries in the Maidenhead area,
wow,
get some feedback, and then we recorded it, and it's now available online to corporates. It's a 6-week course. So we delivered it a few times, and we've done it through some GP surgeries. It was really popular, but there was no funding for that. We had to raise the money ourselves. So we did that. We did all the work was free, did all the recording sessions free. So all our time, we spent a lot of time on that 6-week program
experience, expertise, but
because
it's,
we believed in it and we know it works.
yeah,
But moving forward, I don't know how that's going to get subsidized. I don't know how it will work, because the NHS, you know, they're struggling as it is, and they're going to need to obviously put their money other places, like maybe
yeah.
with the radiographers and things, because there's not enough people coming in that want to do radiography, and then we're going to have a increase in breast cancer, and you know.
There's just so many different kind of, you know, arms to our bodies, you know, as in not literally arms not.
That would be weird.
Very weird, Evie. But it's like I say, it's much more complicated, isn't it, than just you and I thinking, wouldn't it be great to each
Yeah.
GP surgery? So maybe like a pharmacy, and even the pharmacists, they're really working with them, aren't they? But again, that's kind of still that scientific academic rather, actually don't just take a pill, look at what you're eating and stuff. So
Yeah.
that'll be interesting to kind of see, what happens with change. I wanted to touch very briefly about the sad, because I know you've met him and he's a bit of like a mentor to you that you've seen him.
Oh,
The lovely Dr. Michael Mosley. I'm sorry because I know you knew him. So I'm sorry to hear that sad news. That must have been really upsetting. But what would you like to say about what he kind of, you took his takeaways because he made it so accessible in his cute little.
I think that's the way I think of him, is he made science and nutrition and looking after yourself, he made it accessible to everyone. And he was a real ambassador for health, wasn't he? But genuinely just a lovely family man.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
I mean, I didn't know him well. I met him and he was a lecturer when I was studying. So I've met him a few times. I'd also been to a few more lectures of his and did get the chance to meet him and have a little chit chat with him. He's just exactly what you'd expect him to be.
yeah.
Exactly how he is how he comes across. He's authentic, genuine, and he really wanted to make a difference, and he did. He
Yeah, he
did.
did.
He did made a huge difference. And I mean, I just love that he tried so many wacky things out on himself. I mean, did you see when he swallowed the Helicobacter pylori cyst
Yes.
and the tapeworm?
Bonkers.
I
Hilarious.
know. What a man, though.
Man, because he knew he had the audience, and it's like, this is what I'm doing. Let's learn about that in
Yeah.
bite size, and just like you say, because he's just a normal kind of lovely doctor with his
Yeah.
gorgeous GP wife, and yeah, so
And then taught us all how we can reverse diabetes type 2.
yes.
He's changed so many lives. He's touched so many lives doing what he did. Incredible, incredible. A real loss.
Yeah, but it's how wonderful that you've met him and you've gone to his lectures and you're able to kind of continue that your love of it and know that you were on the right path. And actually, it's great that the media think actually you can tell from people who watched his shows and who go to your events and conferences and everything. We are really starting to get a lot more clever and invested with actually understanding, how we've got to be as a society to look after ourselves. But I think, I guess focusing a bit more about the legal profession, and I guess more people will be reading this who are in law. Completely aside now, because I realise it's nearly time up. Would you believe we've nearly been chatting for an hour? I would love to know what your impression as a non-legal person, what you think of the legal profession. It sounds like you've obviously gone through a divorce, which I'm really sorry about. Separation is really
Yeah.
traumatic.
Yeah.
And actually another one you could probably help, I'm sure, with people who are going through separation, because that's trauma on the gut. But actually, no, so what do you think? If I just said to you, when you think about lawyers, Evie, what do you think about lawyers?
It's a really hard question to answer for me, because the only time I've had to instruct someone in the legal profession has been for horrible situations, stressful situations. And so my recollection of it was just like, just get through this.
Right.
But there was also a disconnect, because I don't know whether that was because I was probably a bit disconnected at the time myself, going through what I was going through. But I didn't really ever feel like there was there's not, I suppose you're taught to take the personal side out of it, but there's not that emotional connection, but you don't really want it, because you're talking about something that you just want to get done and get out the way.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm the best person to ask that question. I'm sorry, I can't give you.
I think about, because I think, whatever, it's really important, I think, for the legal profession per se to really, it's changed a lot. And it used to be, for example, it was like the GP and the solicitor or the lawyer kind of thing, and we're better than everyone, or we're your authority. and the regulators and I think people are like, hang on a minute, we're a bit more savvy now, you know, we're all digital, we can see that, you know, everyone's just important. But I think maybe you touched upon it before, it's like understanding what the difference is. I think for the legal profession to say, you know, we're just normal, and these are the different types of law as well. I do think you know, when it's family law or divorce or something, I do think people tend to think, oh, everyone's just after the billable hour, you know, everyone's just making money. So, and you know, with we're seeing the post office scandal, in-house law and everything,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
really kind of like, oh god, it's all the money. But actually speaking of the normal kind of associate, for example, is in a law firm, they're just like you and me, just working their bloody asses off.
yeah.
And they're not, you know, they might not be getting things. And the billable hour, now this is really interesting. It's kind of like they've got to hit a target. So it's a bit salesy, in my opinion. I think it should go. So I think people just think, oh, it's all about money and it's not about the person. And
Yeah, there is that feeling, but then yes, I agree. That is how it felt. It felt like that to me, but I understood it because that's,
solution based.
yes, just get the job done, just
Yeah.
sort it. Quicker the better.
Right. Yeah. Quick. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then I find it interesting, you know, we are talking about, you know, moving house. Do you think of like when you moved house and went through a law firm, do you think of that as a legal professional, or just it's completely different?
No, I did think of it as that. Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I did. I mean, that was, you know, as much as that sort of like, it's stressful, isn't it, moving home? But
Very stressful.
the best day of my life when I put the key in my new home with my children there, and we're still here. You've been to my house.
I love your house. We
I
played.
love my house. I absolutely love being here. So there was the upshot. That was the good
Yeah.
silver bit of the lining.
Yeah, and I think that's what lawyers are there for often. You know, if it's corporate or commercial, then you're going into it with a business and you're like, okay, let's get it sorted, look after. But I think a lot, it is maybe a bit like coming to see you, like last resort. It shouldn't be the last resort. You know, have a. I think lawyers and the legal profession, be it solicitors, lawyers, barristers, that they get a bad rap, because it seems like, oh my God, you're taking money. But actually, they're there, they're trying to solve problems half the time.
Absolutely. They're solving problems, but what would be, I suppose, if you compare what I do to what you do, I would hope that my client left the consultation. My normal feedback would be, I'm actually excited to go shopping. I feel really inspired, really motivated. And
Yeah.
that's what you'd want at the end. Is, I don't know if that's a realistic thing, but you'd want your client to say, okay, I know what I'm doing now, feel really secure, feel really I'm in good hands.
Yeah, you've got my back. I know you've
Yeah.
got my best interest at heart.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
I feel like I'm being looked after. I think
Yeah.
that's a lovely note to finish on, because we're only there. I just want to say that I will transcribe this, everyone. It'll be on YouTube whenever I get round to it. I'll link it, and I'll also link back to Evie's website. Evie does have you have so many different ways to help. Be it you've got the tests that you do as well, which I find
Yes, we do a lot of functional testing, so we can really just cut to the chase and find out what is going on. Just if you're at the end of the tether and want answers, that's the best route to go. We can talk about that.
and I think my big takeaway is actually do it sooner rather than later. You know, I just think it's like a yearly MOT. Personally, that's what I feel about it.
A
So,
pre-winter check's good. Get
what's
you make sure a pre-winter check to just make sure that you're, yeah, look after yourself going into the winter.
a great idea? But I just want to say thank you so much, Evie. I've loved speaking to you as always. I know you zoomed in from London for this, and you're dashing out again. But I will, so I'll link back, I'll transcribe it, and then I'll just put it out to anyone who wants to listen. But I've learned so much, as I always do. So thank you for your time.
Oh, well, thank you for inviting me. It's lovely to talk to you as always. Thanks, Elaine.
All right, my darling. Speak to you
All
soon.
right. Bye for now. Bye.